If you do not have a mask, we have extras. We'll be happy to provide one for you. Seating in the auditorium is set up to ensure that everyone will remain 6 feet apart. If you came with someone from your household, we ask that you please leave the appropriate space between yourselves and others. Our meeting space is set up for individual seating, so please do not remove any of the tape for the areas that are blocked off to help us maintain the recommended distancing. Public comment cards and meeting agendas are located just outside of the auditorium on the marked table. Once you fill out a comment card, please submit this in the drop box next to the comment cards. Our board assistant will collect the cards when I call for public comment and deliver them to our board secretary, Ms. Lewis. I will call down each individual one at a time to address the board at the presentation table just in front of us here. Again, we ask that you wear your mask during the comment period. We also have interpreters working remote. If you need assistance, please let us know, as we have staff present to support this at the top floor of the auditorium. Thank you, staff. On behalf of our superintendent, Dr. Leadren Roby, and the Board of Education, thank you for being here in attendance with us. And so I will call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Today is Monday, April 19th. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Davis? Here. Dr. Flores?
Present.
Ms. Grant is excused. Ms. Lewis is here. Reverend Matias is excused. Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Present.
Dr. Baker?
Here.
President Jackie?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. May I please have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. On to our celebrations this evening. Dr. Roby.
Our very own Miranda Recollet from the Native American Education Program was an honoree in the 2020 Influential Award presented by the virtual inaugural MPWRD Business Magazine's Influential Awards. Pronounced Empowered X is a content platform that centers on Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific, and Indigenous Native American people in business, entrepreneurship, and social justice while amplifying their voices and experiences. I would like to introduce Dr. Maida Gunno, who will also introduce Ms. Miranda Recollet.
Good evening, Dr. Roby, President Schottky, and distinguished board members. Tonight I have the honor and privilege of recognizing Miranda Recollet, Program Specialist for the Native American Education Program. Miranda? As Dr. Roby said, Miranda is being recognized for being the recipient of the 2020 Influential Award given by Empowered Magazine and Empowered X Media Group. So with that, Miranda, congratulations.
Good evening.
evening.
Thank you, and miigwech to Dr. Bahamande Gano for this acknowledgement. Being somewhat new to Grand Rapids, this news was very unexpected and it was a welcome surprise. So out of 400 nominees, 20 amazing game changers within Grand Rapids were selected for the good work that they do within our community. I received my award within the preserver category for my contributions involving Anishinaabe, which is Michigan's native language. But my work would not be possible without our district's investment in Native education. Out of all the districts within West Michigan, Grand Rapids Public Schools is the only one with a Native American education program, which speaks to our commitment in inclusion and diversity. So miigwech Dr. Gano, miigwech to our superintendent, Dr. Leadrian Roby, and meanwhile, chimiigwech to our Board of Education. So thank you.
Congratulations, Amanda. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. We do not have any public comment for board agenda items, so we will move forward into our reports. Ms. Lewis, Secretary's report, please.
We have our board committee meetings. The policy committee meeting will be this Wednesday at 5 p.m. at the Franklin campus. The finance committee will be meeting next Monday, April 26th at 5:30 p.m. at the Franklin campus in the auditorium.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lewis. We'll move on to our committee chair updates. Ms. Davis, Academic Achievement Committee.
Yes, we met last Wednesday, the 14th, and we had an instructional council update, as we do with every meeting. We have quite a few courses that have been approved to be piloted. With fine arts, there is an essentials music production course, a songwriting course, music appreciation, and a film course. There's also a global politics course that was presented and needs to still fully develop a syllabus, but that will move to be piloted later. And they spoke of the transition to college math course that is in partnership with GRCC. That will be piloted next winter. And they also spoke to the fact that Malika Brown was in attendance at their last meeting, and there was conversation on equity in the curriculum. They are looking at different tools for vetting courses that are presented to them. They looked at a culturally responsive scorecard and at some tools that help to identify bias in courses that we choose and that we have for our students. We also just had a quick update as far as the numbers in hybrid and virtual in attendance overall. About 95% of students are in attendance. And then I just wrote down some of the numbers of hybrid and virtual because I found that interesting to keep that updated. So elementary is at 62.5% hybrid, 37.5 virtual. K-8 buildings, 63 hybrid, 36 virtual. Middle school, 61 hybrid, 38 virtual. And high school, 54 hybrid and 45 virtual. And then we had quite an extensive update on what is happening for summer school, which is exciting. We had 3,900 applications this year, and in a typical year we have between 1,300 and 1,400. So they removed some of the barriers for the application process for summer school, and it seems to be quite successful. Right now, summer school is set for June 21st through July 22nd. At the elementary level, they'll be getting ELA and math and project-based learning. Same for the middle school with a little differentiation in the time for each of those things. They also have a social emotional portion to their day based on the feedback they got when that was part of summer school last time. And the high school is based on credit recovery, and there's over 800 students signed up for that. They are planning an evaluation process, and they will be evaluating the process of summer school and the outcomes through surveys, credits earned, map test data, and pre and post assessments. And let me just make sure I got everything. I just wrote down some notes on the project-based learning. Super interesting. Each week we'll have, or each grade level has a different project, and that comes from pblworks.org. So the projects are already set up for them to utilize, and they picked the ones that seemed to fit our community best. So I think that will be just wonderful for our kiddos. That's about it. Anybody from the committee feel like they need to add something? Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davis.
I have a question, if
Oh,
I could.
pardon me, yes. go ahead, Dr.
I was wondering if they shared anything with you with respect to summer school in targeting native language development for any of our populations.
I know that wasn't highlighted, but I know that, I did note down that Southwest Community Campus is one of the sites for this year. Does anybody want to speak more to that? Yeah, Dr. Gunnell?
Yes, Dr. Gunnell, thank you.
So thank you for that question. Good evening again. We are planning and are having conversation of having native language instruction for K-3 for the students at Southwest that are in the dual language immersion program.
So just K-3.
Yes, at this time.
Will there be a virtual option in summer school?
Yes, there will be, in person and virtual.
I have written down that 67% right now are signed up for in-person.
Can't hear you, Deborah.
67% of the people that applied for summer school requested in-person.
The reason I raised the question is it is very, very important to develop a native language for the students that we have, and it also provides equity and access to students that are ELL, that are Spanish dominant or other native languages, not just Spanish. And if we're looking at equity issues with respect to language development, then we ought to be providing a full scale of those services. I also had another question regarding our special needs students and what plans there are for summer and whether or not those were discussed in the Academic Achievement Committee.
That was not discussed.
Okay. I'm kind of anxious to hear what plans we have for summer school, because I think that this is an opportunity for us to address learning loss, and that we should be doing everything possible to make sure that our students have an opportunity to catch up.
If we can ask Dr. Gorman to come down and do a little unpacking around the differentiation around our special needs populations as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gunnell.
Thank you, Dr. Roby, President Shockey, members of the board. So there are many students with disabilities enrolled in our summer program. Dr. Flores, if you can go back, we have the tape of the Academic Achievement Committee. Mr. Atkins did a very good job of explaining the program itself, all of the locations, and then Jonathan Harper, who I believe is here this evening,
He's back there.
explained the nuts and bolts of the program. So there are, in fact, students with disabilities enrolled in the programs, all of our programs, many students with IEPs. And again, we gave a very comprehensive presentation at the Academic Achievement Committee. But again, there was some feedback provided at that meeting where we may need another location across town, especially in Ottawa Hills. So we've taken that into consideration and we're making adjustments there. So we take all of your feedback very seriously. But again, there are students with IEPs, there is language instruction, and we hear your requests and we'll continue to look into them.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Is there anything else I can add just about summer school? I know Mr. Atkins is here. Is there any other questions that
Are
you
we
can answer?
going to have the summer school program where kids make up the lost credits and then have their graduation?
Correct. So that's exclusively in high school.
Uh-huh.
So what we've done in previous years is we've housed that particular program at UPrep. It's centrally located. There was air conditioning. Now that there's air conditioning in other buildings, we want to give UPrep a break this year. So we're having one program at this particular location. And then we got feedback from the Academic Achievement Committee that we wanted another location on the southeast side. So as of right now, we're finalizing our plans for Ottawa Hills. So we'll have a high school program at Ottawa Hills and then a high school program here at the city. Other questions that I can answer? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. All right, thank you again, Ms. Davis, for your report. Reverend Matthias is excused this night, so I'll just direct you to the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting, and we will move on to the Legislative Committee update from Dr. Baker.
Yes, the Legislative Committee met on Friday. There's three major issues that we're keeping track of. As you guys know, third grade reading and its impact was supposed to went into place last year. The district has asked that be postponed again, largely because of the testing concerns. And also connected to testing concerns is that the district has asked for the teacher evaluation to not jump up to 40% and leave it at 25%, which is what it has been. Both of those issues there's been no movement on. I do want to make it clear that we are not, the district nor is the state legislature considering that there is an issue of accountability, just that the measurements that are used for evaluation are not really accurate this year because of the way we have been running school. The final issue is that we've been keeping track of is, as you know, we've had some presentations in the Finance Committee and in this full board about the possibility of funds coming from the second CARES fund. And then there's also a third COVID relief fund that has been enacted. Both of those have been held up by dispute between the governor and the legislature. There's a thawing of that relationship, so hopefully that will lead to some funding coming our way soon. And so we had a good discussion, but those are the three major concerns that we're tracking.
Great, thank you, Dr. Baker. All right, we will move on to our superintendent's reports for this evening. Dr. Roby.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see you in person. We're going to begin the evening talking about the Grand Rapids Public Schools Foundation. Thank you, first of all, to our GRPS Foundation partners. Last week, we gave a preview of some exciting things that were going to be taking place as we celebrate 150 years of Grand Rapids Public Schools. And we've already begun our year-long party, including celebrating with our staff with a couple of surprises. And there's so much more ahead. Mr. Helmholtz is going to come forward and talk a little bit about the upcoming Masquerade Ball. Mr. Helmholtz.
Dr. Roby, President Shockey, members of the board. Sally Andrada sends her regrets. She has a newborn grandchild that she is taking care of in Midland, so she couldn't join us. And she thought it was going to be virtual, but of course this is our first in-person in 13 months, not with one exception of your retreat, I believe. So the big thing this week is the Masquerade. So every year, Grand Rapids Public Schools Foundation has their annual Mindshare event. This is their largest fundraiser of the year. They're doing it 100% virtual. It's only going to be 1 hour long or less. But this event is what generates the most money to support the programs that support our students. And so we encourage all the members of the board, cabinet, and all those stakeholders listening and watching. This is a great way to support our students, to support our teachers in schools, and support the Grand Rapids Public Schools Foundation. If you go to grpsf.org, you can't miss it. There's a link right on there. You can make an online donation. I did it myself this morning because I was a little late to make my own contribution. That's $100 per ticket, and we just encourage you to show up and support that. And then I also just wanted to put a plug in for the new GRPS alumni.org website. So as Dr. Roby referenced, on April 11th, that was the 150th anniversary of the formation of the very board you're serving on. That's when the mayor then appointed the 3 members of the new Grand Rapids Board of Education. Well, as part of that 150th anniversary, we're really doing a big push with the Grand Rapids Public Schools Foundation to get our alumni to sign up to be part of the grpsalumni.org, share their history, share their stories, and the goal is to create the largest homecoming and alumni event in alignment with the crosstown football game that'll be coming up here in August. So stay tuned for additional information. And then lastly, a shout out and thanks to the GRPS Foundation and Lake Michigan Credit Union. Dr. Roby had shared that she wanted to do something special for all of our employees as part of the 150th anniversary and as part of a thanks and appreciation for everything that our employees have done. And so they were able to pull together some funds with support from Lake Michigan Credit Union, and more than 2,000 bags of popcorn that were customized with a nice little 150th anniversary logo were distributed. We still have more to distribute, so if there's any employees that are out there that didn't get their bag, we had to reorder a few, so we got more coming. But just another sign of how we partner closely with the foundation and how they do everything they can to support not just our students, but our amazing teachers, school leaders, and support staff. And that's all I have. Lastly, she did want me to announce that the Great Girls Great Sports Camp event will happen in May. This camp will give our female athletes a chance to participate and learn more about the different sports: volleyball, basketball, softball, swimming, golf, and bowling. And we'll have more information to share. Obviously, of course, that is subject to all things COVID, just as we've all lived through for the last 13 months. That's all. Any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Helmholtz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helmholtz. So I'm going to invite both Larry Oberst and Larry Johnson to come forward, and this is relation to our facilities. Recently, we've had some unsolicited interest in several of our district properties, and by Board Policy 3950, the superintendent must seek board approval to consider offers from buyers or lessees of vacant, unused, or underused property. Prior to any board action approving any sale, lease, or other disposition of board-owned properties, there's also a public information hearing with specific steps as outlined in the policy. And again, there's been several recent inquiries related to our building properties, and we'd like to, again, invite both Mr. Johnson and Mr. Oberst forward to share some updates and then allow the board to provide some additional guidance for us as to how we would like to proceed. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Oberst and Mr. Johnson.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Roby. Good evening, President Shockey and board members. And the two Larrys will tag team this evening, I should say. Good to see you all after 13 months of staring at a computer screen. It's nice to see people in person, so I appreciate it. So, as we have talked many times in the last probably months about our facility situation, and you're all aware that we have a number of vacant facilities. Some have been vacant for a period of time. By policy, we don't actively advertise that these buildings are available for sale, but from time to time we do get inquiries from various members of the community and organization. As you know, we have sold some of the buildings over the years, primarily since my tenure has been here, to affordable housing developers, and it's turned out well for the community as a whole. Over the last 30 to 60 days, there seems to have been there has been an increase in the number of inquiries that have come primarily to Mr. Johnson here related to a few of our buildings. The Beckwith building, which, as you may recall, is currently being leased to the Intermediate School District, where they conduct their adult education programs. We've also had inquiries with Alexander, which is a vacant building. It's been vacant for a number of years. And more recently, an inquiry related to the Kensington building, which again is the Black Hills area building. It's been vacant for a number of years. And we, over the years, have not had much interest in that particular building. In addition, and besides the Beckwith building, the Intermediate School District also leases from us the KEC Oakley, and that is a center-based programs are conducted there. So they leased that when they took over the center-based special ed programs a couple of years ago, as well as the Straight building. The Straight building is primarily for a center-based special education program, but we also have our Native American program that uses a portion of that building. So the ISD is currently leasing 3 buildings, Beckwith, KEC, Oakley, and Straight. Just really prior to the pandemic hitting, or about that same time, about a year ago, the ISD did inquire about the opportunity of potentially acquiring really at that time, all the buildings that they were in, were leasing from us. At this point in time, things have changed. They are not interested in the Beckwith building other than to continue their lease for an indeterminate period of time. But they have approached us and they would be interested in acquiring the KEC Oakley building and the Straight building to continue the special education, center-based special education programs that are there currently and have been there for a number of years, actually. So, speaking internally, we believe it would be a prudent, I guess, course of action to get your approval, the board's approval on furthering discussions with the ISD on the Straight and the KEC Oakley building. We have no plans to repurpose those buildings. Again, they are conducting special education, center-based special education programs there, which do include GRPS students as well as other students from Kent County. And that would be our request at this point in time. The other buildings I mentioned, the Beckwith, Alexander, and Kensington, we have had inquiries. I'd like your input on whether or not it may be prudent for us to continue some discussions on that. Again, discussion doesn't necessarily result in any kind of sale. Any transaction obviously needs to be approved by this board in finality anyways, but at this point now with the inquiries we've had, and might be prudent for us to continue some of those discussions, but definitely move down the path with Oakley and Straight with the ISD and see if we can negotiate a transaction with those particular buildings at this point in time. Larry, I don't know anything else you want to add?
No, I think you covered most of it.
Okay. Questions, comments? I'm certainly
So if I can summarize what I think I heard. One is KEC, Oakley, and Straight, which are being used by the ISD, and they would like to consider purchasing them to continue doing what they're doing.
correct.
So that, and you'd like our approval to just start that discussion.
Pardon me?
And you'd like our approval to start that discussion?
Yeah, as the policy indicates, for us to further discussions on any inquiries. We need your blessing, so to speak.
This Beckwith, you're not recommending any discussion on?
Well, the Beckwith building, ISD, as I mentioned, is in there with the adult education program. They more recently have indicated that they don't want to own that building. They likely may move that adult education program to a different location. So we have had other interest from other parties for the Beckwith building. Again, any further discussions on transactions need to be approved by this board. We just think it makes sense with Straight and KEC Oakley, obviously. The other three buildings, we'd like to have the opportunity to further some discussions, and whether it results in a transaction is, who knows.
If I can add, with respect to the other vacant properties, that should also be included as we are exploring our school improvement, our strategic planning process and our facilities. That's one component of it. But again, we wanted to make sure that by our policy that we are following it, even though we have not solicited any of this, it's come forward, and to make sure that as people are asking questions, to make sure that you all are aware of it, and then kind of to provide some guidance around next steps for the 2 buildings that we're talking about with the ISD. And then the other piece that is more for discussion, not necessarily to vote on, is clarification for myself and our team, what constitutes a good faith offer. And so as you know, properties are always have an appraisal value, and then what from the board's guidance do we feel is most appropriate to continue a conversation, and when do we kind of say, no, it's not moving forward. And then also clarification of how you would like us to address unsolicited offers as well.
I have some questions with regards to looking at those offers and conversations. One piece I would ask that we look at being creative in dealing with some of these offers or conversations to make sure that we're looking at an equity piece as well. Particularly, and I'm thinking about housing, if some of these offers are coming in from people who want to develop those properties for housing, how can we make sure that we are including the equity piece in that where there's affordability with that? How can we be creative in looking at those contracts to make sure that they benefit the community as well, and that they also benefit, hopefully, a future population that would support our district? So I would push that piece as well, and then I would also look if we are, again, having conversations, if we just look to be creative to make sure that we're protecting the interest of the district. For instance, again, it may be wonderful to buy a property from us today and then turn around and flip it in 5 years and sell it. Us even possibly having a clause to have a right of first refusal if they want to sell those properties. So that is the piece that I would ask that as we look at these conversations that we're looking at, how can we have impact for the district in the future, and then again, make sure that we're providing some type of equity piece as we look at those conversations to protect our interests in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely, Mrs. Williams, and in the transactions that we have closed in prior years, certainly since the time I've been in the 7 years, those kinds of issues you brought up are things we do look at. And we do have a standard clause in any sales contract that says we have a right of first refusal. Usually it's a 10-year time frame, expected a 10-year B. So all those are considerations that we look at and have looked at in the past, yes, but thank you.
I'm curious on the unsolicited inquiries. Do they include any plans that folks have, or they just send a letter and sort of offering an asking price? I guess I'm just sort of what to Ms. Williams, but I'm wondering what folks may have in mind for these purchases. I think that's something that I guess I would like to know more about.
Well, I think it'd be accurate to say, Mr. Johnson, and most of them have gone through there, although I've seen them, the inquiries we've had so far have not been real specific. Is that correct? And we haven't furthered the conversations pending this meeting, as you know, so I can't tell you with any certainty what other than the ISD, obviously, currently has those programs there, but the other inquiries we had, they did not state a specific purpose at this point.
Thank you.
I've been comfortable with the process that's happened over the last few years. I know that there's been a couple properties that have been sold. I think, from my vantage point, the 2 ISD, the Casey, Oakley, and Strait, it seems like it's appropriate to at least have a conversation at that point. But the other 3, I think that I personally like to wait until we see what the strategic plan looks like in terms of, I know that Beckwith is in a really important location. Alexander is in the middle of, a lot of our students. And then I don't know what the condition is in Kensington, but it seems like it'd be nice to have the feedback from our strategic planning process about what future enrollment might look like and whether or not we want to be in those buildings. It seems early to make any decisions with regards to those 3 buildings. If Casey, Oakley, and Strait are going to be basically helping kids in our schools anyway, if they want to own it versus leasing it, it seems like a conversation you guys should have and report back to the finance committee and bring here. My point.
That was going to be my recommendation as board president, was to consider the conversations with the ISD, but that we really are in the beginning stages of our long-range plan, and I would regret to see us let any buildings go that in 9 months' time we may have had a different vision for. And we certainly would want community and stakeholder input about the development of those projects and to build assets in those neighborhoods as much as we can if we do decide to let go of some of our properties. And I know we've spoken as well about talking to the city of Grand Rapids, which is also going to be developing their next multi-year plan, and we might have some opportunities for partnership with their priorities as well. Dr. Flores, did I see you wanting to make a comment?
Yes, but mine was a raised eyebrow question, because I received, and many of you also received the same email, and it had a concern about transparency with respect to conflict of interest in one of the buildings. And I immediately thought, well, we probably do want to make sure there are no conflicts of interest in any sales of buildings that we have in the future. And that speaks to process, and I think Dr. Baker hit on that we ought to be looking at processes and how that impacts our district through the strategic planning process. But I think that whether there's any basis or it's completely a frivolous point that the person raised about conflict of interest, I think that, given the nature of transparency, that we ought to make sure that we have a process that examines that. And then, as Ms. Williams said, what if somebody's flipping these properties and so forth? It'd be very important to make sure that there is no conflict of interest, and that we're capable of saying, we run a transparent system that is ethical. So that was my question, and I didn't probably time right, I guess, now. But I support us going through the strategic planning process, determine what our assets are, and which ones we need to liquidate, and what is best for the community. So I support that.
Yeah, I do as well. I agree with Dr. Baker, and I don't know if folks would think it's inappropriate, but sort of to Dr. Flores' point as far as transparency, if there is, I guess, an official inquiry, is it inappropriate for that to be shared with the board? Again, obviously, as individual board members, we wouldn't be taking any action, but just for awareness sake, I guess I don't see it being inappropriate if there's an official inquiry about something, to at least to forward that by email for our awareness.
So if I can ask a clarification question, because again, some of the inquiries have been, they've ranged, and so where I think for our team, what is considered a good faith inquiry? And so just for an example, if you have a building that's worth $500,000, and I'm just using that as an example, and someone says, can I buy the building for $10,000? That would not, from my perspective, be a good faith kind of request. And so what I need a little bit clarification from this discussion is what's kind of the threshold of when there's a legitimate or something that you would consider?
In the past, when we've had a situation like that, I believe we went to current property values. Am I correct? When we went through this process before on another building, or two buildings that I recall, that we and that really needs, from my perspective, to be where we're at. What is the property worth now?
Well, I guess I would say, that's sort of why I asked about what people are going to do. Let's say, for example, if there was was a developer, and again, for someone, if it was the example you gave, $500,000 property, and $10,000, this probably wouldn't be the case. But for lack of a better explanation or example, if a person was going to do something that we had confidence that was truly would be a huge benefit to our community. Let's say if it was, low-income housing, at some rate that we know would really just be beneficial to our families. Of course, it sounds easy to say that, but I think depending on the cause, I think certain things should be considered. I think we should be a bit more creative in you know, in addressing or working with folks who may be championing a cause that we believe in as a district. So again, I don't have anything specific, but so I can't answer your question as far as what a threshold is. I guess that's why I would like to see the communication if as an individual board member, if it's something I believe in, then it would be on me to appropriately champion as an individual to try to solicit support, but it absolutely wouldn't be on me to take action for it as an individual.
Okay. So if I'm hearing, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase, if there's an offer that, and maybe our team come up with some suggested kind of thresholds of some of those things that were just listed, and to say, okay, this meets that criteria, and that's why we're moving this one forward. As at least to bring for discussion, not that we're saying anything other than we're bringing this one forward because it meets the threshold, and we can create something along that nature to kind of say, these are some suggestions of what we would consider the appraisal value and what's offered, and then also the overall good of the GRPS community, the benefit of the community as aligned to our equity rubric or whatever kind of the criteria that we establish. And that's fine, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, you know, I definitely don't have exact language at this time, but I'm definitely confident I could think of some. But in short, I think really what I'm saying is I think it's a bit more appropriate for the board to be more of the gatekeepers or filters as opposed to the administration on issues of this nature.
No, I agree. I was just going to bring a suggestion forward, and then you all can say, yes, more of this, less of that.
Gotcha.
So, yes,
Gotcha.
we're saying the same thing. I'm just trying to make sure we have some sort of process. Okay.
And these conversations have happened well in the finance committee, where the questions are like, well, are they going to resell it? Is it equitable? Are we, you know, how do we, right? I mean, all the questions that we're asking here are usually asked. And I think that it has worked, although I think it's probably been a little bit further along in the process. You know, we did get burned about 11 years ago, and I don't want that to happen again. But it sounds like we fixed that by having this right of first refusal. So that's to some extent, there have been things put in place to protect the district. I think it's hard to know. Actually, I mean, I felt that since that happened, there's been a lot of deliberate thought at the administration level, and when it's brought to usually the finance committee first, there's a good discussion about how we should proceed. And I've been okay with that process, but to be honest, I don't know what that looked like at the administrative level. What it looked like when it got to the board.
Okay, other questions or conversation?
You've got enough to work on. We're pretty big, high-level stuff. I think your proposal is like, you know, what conditions, propose something to the board, I think it gives us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also feel like some of those conditions might pop out naturally during the strategic planning process.
Right.
I agree with you. I think it could be an intentional part of the process. Just listening to this discussion, we could ask the firm to work with us to develop the criteria of the types of projects we would want to entertain the possibility of selling or developing our properties. So I think in the short term, Dr. Roby will watch for you to develop a little bit of that criteria for us. And then I suppose you'll need a vote from us eventually to have conversations with the ISD. Is that right, Mr. Oberst? Okay.
Yeah. One thing though is I don't think that we should have a piece of paper that says we'll consider 50% of market value if it meets a good purpose, because then we're going to be deciding what good purposes look like, and I think that that's something that's more. I mean, at a certain point, we're going to have to trust the administration to make some decisions about what's in good faith too. So, but we don't want a piece of paper that says anything at 50% or lower we'll accept.
Well, I guess I will say, I do want to clarify, it's definitely not a matter, I don't want to insinuate there's a mistrust piece going on here. It's definitely more pro communication and transparency with the community. And I would personally be okay, even if it did say that. I have confidence that we could appropriately vet that. I'm not suggesting that it says that, but I just want to say clearly that I'm not necessarily in agreement with them. You don't say that.
Understood.
All right, anything further? Do you need a vote this evening on the ISD properties? I don't have that as an action item, but we can.
I don't know if we formally need a vote, just a go ahead type of thing. So it's
Yes.
up to you as
Okay.
president, of course.
So I'm seeing nodding heads, so I believe you have our approval to begin those discussions with the ISD on the properties they're interested in.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Obert and Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Next up, the GRPS Virtual School Expo, which takes place tomorrow. Mark your calendars. It is our second virtual expo, and it's scheduled from 6 until 7:30 p.m. We are proud to be one of the most comprehensive school selection choices in West Michigan, excuse me. The event will feature all neighborhood and theme schools. Families will be able to meet with building principals, teachers, other program leaders to talk about what makes each school very special and unique. Other programs such as early childhood, our after-school loop program, our Native American program will also be on hand to answer questions for families and to talk about their programs. All families are invited, and it'll be through Zoom, so people can Zoom in and out of different meetings and check out different schools to learn more about our programs. And we also have some door prizes for attendees, giveaways, and much, much more. So again, it's tomorrow, April 20th, from 6 until 7:30. All of our schools will be hosting their own Zoom, and they're recorded. So if you don't have an opportunity to participate live, you'll have an opportunity to go back and look and see what the conversation and discussion was about. The last two items that I have for my report this evening are the expansion of the hybrid for in-person for K-8, which is slated to begin Monday, April 26th, a week from today. We are still planning for our kindergarten through 8th grade students to begin the 4-day in-person hybrid instruction effective Monday. And then also a quick update for grades 9 through 12. At present, we are looking to make a final recommendation of what we're doing with our high school students, so grades 9 through 12, by the end of this week. And the purpose of that being is, as you know, our community rates have kind of gone up, and then now they're starting to go back down. And we want to be able to give our high school families, our 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade families, an opportunity to plan for the remainder of the year. And our goal will be to provide a recommendation by Friday, April 23rd, with implementation if we're making changes to take place by Monday, May 3rd. And so we'll have to ask for a board vote between the 23rd and probably next week so that people can begin planning. But we're continuing to watch the information and the data, and we just wanted to make sure that we share that with our community so that they know one way or the other what we're going to be doing with our high schoolers. That actually concludes my updates and reports for this evening. Are there other questions that I can answer?
All right, thank you, Dr. Roby. Move on to our action items this evening. First is the purchasing agenda. Do we have any questions or discussion on the purchasing agenda? All right, may I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
All right, Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant's excused, Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias is excused, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Shackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is our emergency operations plan. Any questions or discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
All right, Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant's excused, Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias is excused, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Shackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And lastly, we have the Grand Rapids Child Discovery Center board member approval. Any questions or discussion on this item? All right. May I have a motion for approval, please?
Support, motion to approve the Grand Rapids Child Discovery Center board member.
Support.
All right, Ms. Lewis, please call the roll.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant's excused, Ms. Lewis, yes. Matias is excused. Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
President Grant?
Shaki? Yes.
I can't get used to
That's all right, that's all right.
President Chackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And lastly, our consent agenda grouping. Any discussion or questions? If not, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
All right, Ms. Lewis, please call the roll. Okay.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant's excused, Ms. Lewis, yes. Matias is excused. Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
President Chackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Just one reminder this evening under my discussion item is that our board retreat has been scheduled for Friday, May 21st, and we will be receiving some pre-work from Greenway Strategy Group in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. Next, we have public comment for non-agenda items. It looks like we have one, so we'll wait for that card to arrive. Thank you. Yes. Step forward.
Mary Bowens from the GREA.
Welcome, Ms. Bowens. We'll have Ms. Lewis read the rules again.
I
Thank
feel
you
like
so
this is
much.
the biggest social event.
Yes.
This is so exciting.
Individuals will be called to the speaker table one at a time to address the board during subsequent public comment time. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. You will need to state your full name before providing your comment. We will then start the timer at the beginning of your public comment time and provide you with 1 minute notice indicating 1 minute remains. You will need to complete your comment time upon being notified that the 3 minutes are passed. Board members do not respond to public comment. Concerns will be brought to the attention of the appropriate staff. We value your input and thank you for sharing.
Thank you. President Roby, President Shadke, and board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board this evening. I appreciate that the union voice has been added with intentionality to the agenda. First off, our staff is exhausted. Elementary staff work 4 days a week with no planning breaks for elementary. It makes for a very long day. They are teaching in person, providing asynchronous work, and meeting synchronously with students in small groups. The day of planning, Wednesday, is filled with small group lessons, meetings, committee work, paperwork, and maybe even some planning time. Secondary have to teach in person and virtually, and that continues to put pressure on the teachers to make sure both groups are receiving an equitable experience while switching between two teaching methods. Special education teachers and providers are overwhelmed with the extra paperwork and data collecting that goes beyond the 24-hour day. No one is exempt from these additional expectations. The staff continues to amaze me with their perseverance and attitude to keep doing what is best for students. Additionally, we have all but finished negotiating the calendar for GREA for the 21-22 school year. It looks very similar to this year's calendar with a few additional features. One of those is about parent-teacher conferences. They're not being set on certain dates and times. 2 evenings each semester does not always fit the bill. One thing we have learned during COVID is that parent communication takes on many forms and times during the day. The old school way of doing parent-teacher conferences does not meet the needs of families anymore. GREA is hoping that buildings will look at creative ways to communicate with families that fit the family's needs with varying times based on the parents' or guardian's schedule. and with additional ways to communicate, whether it's in person, by phone, or Zoom. We feel that this approach will enhance the parents' involvement in their students' education and further our commitment to educate every child. I am appreciative of the board meeting in person with solidarity with the staff who have been with students, and I recognize the extra caution taken to meet here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowens. That concludes our public comment. Superintendent comments, Dr. Roby.
So again, I want to say thank you to our staff and the work that everyone has done. Mr. Helmholtz alluded to some of the treats that we did for our staff, popcorn treats, again, as a way to say thank you for the hard work, because we don't want anyone to think that this has been an easy lift for any of our staff. I want to give special consideration just this evening as we talk about our healthcare workers, including our nurses. They have been so very kind, they're always very professional, and they have sprinkled in a lot of care over the last 6 to 9 months this school year around the work that they're doing. They've been instrumental in keeping all of us abreast of ever-changing things, all COVID related, and making sure that students, staff, families have information related to testing and other health related information. And so again, just a quick shout out to them. Also to our staff behind the scenes. And as you know, this is our first time being in person, and there was a lot of work that went into that. And I want to certainly acknowledge the staff that have done lots of the preparation work to make sure that it was socially distanced and making sure that we had good communication around what it would look like, and just to kind of give a shout out to those. And then finally, again, a shout out to our GRPS Foundation and Lake Michigan Credit Union for partnering with us. Your work is just so very valuable in this time, and you made a lot of people smile. So again, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Roby. On to our board member comments. I'll start with Ms. Davis.
Well, I was going to just pass for tonight, but I do want to just recognize the administrative professionals. Their day to celebrate them is Wednesday, and we have tons of wonderful administrative professionals in our district. And in the the administrative building. So thank you to all of them and all of the work they do. They carry many hats.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Dr. Baker.
Yes, it's great to be in person, although it seems like I feel a little rusty actually talking to multiple people at a time instead of the screen. But I just want to reiterate, I happen to be lucky enough to have relationships, friendships, professional relationships outside of the district with teachers, and I just want to echo that, just an amazing amount of resiliency and creativity and caring to teach. But I also want to extend that to the administration. I think that we have gotten a lot of communication, and all of our communications are serious and concerned about the well-being of children, and particularly the children of people who are sending us notes. But I know that this year we have seen just what the burden of caring for children is across this district, and you know, hopefully the administration feels this from other people on a consistent basis, even though you're questioned often on a consistent basis about, but trying to keep people alive this year, trying to keep mental health of staff and students and families together, trying to make sure students are learning, trying to make sure students are fed. You know, it's just a remarkable amount of work, and I hope that it's appreciated. I don't know if every step of the way has been the perfect decision to make. I do know that whatever we do next week will be applauded by some and upset others, but you know, I just have to applaud you guys for making those decisions, and I feel very confident following your lead all year long, because I just think that you're doing so much and you understand the burden, and the decisions that you're making reflect that. So anyway, I think it needs to be said out loud as often as possible.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Baker. Mr. Ross?
What he said.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Dr. Flores, go down to you.
Well, I'd like to say that, you know, I have have served under a lot of superintendents. I can't even remember, it was 9 or 10 of them over the years in this district. And when I was elected to public office here as a board member, I was probably the first to criticize this district for the lack of performance in our graduation rate. It was 50%, less than 50%, and it was unacceptable. And I think that the biggest story that we have in our district today is the recent graduation rates. Was it upwards of 80%? And was it 10% greater than the state? Or, if I recall?
It's slightly above the state average. Sorry.
It's 81.09%, and it's like a percentage point above the state.
Let me say this. A lot of kudos to our staff, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, every tutor, every administrator in the building, everyone that made this possible. This is why we should be calling out the band. You know, the other superintendents that I recall, they called out the band if we made 5% increase, and it was always less than acceptable. So I'm going to rise, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to rise, give you a standing ovation, because this is the direction, this is the outcome of the performance we expect.
I know you're going to do that. I brought my harmonica.
There you go. Thank you.
Good job, though. Really.
All right, thank you, Dr. Flores. Mrs. Williams.
I would just like to thank the staff for always making sure things are done at the level of excellence. And I appreciate that it is noticed. And thank you for hearing us. That means a lot. I don't know if people are always heard in these venues, and so that you hear us, not just as a board member, but as a community servant, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Dr. Roby, and your staff, and let's keep up the good work.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Lewis.
Yes, this may be what Dr. Baker said, but I couldn't hear what he said, so I'm sure it was really good, though.
I'll let you know if you're wrong.
Yeah, no, I just want people to know that we all here on the board receive all kinds of emails and letters and so on and so forth. And when I receive those, I do try to respond in some way, but I do welcome your opinions, and even if they agree with me or don't agree with me. But I think it's important to understand that we're between a rock and a hard spot right now, and you can only make so many people happy, and half of you will be happy and half of you won't. But I do want you to continue to send us the emails and the letters and so on, but at the same time recognize that we're hearing you, but there are decisions that have to be made with all kinds of ramifications.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lewis. I can't say I have much to add, but I do have a wonderful packet of thank you notes from Mr. Levi's class at Campus Elementary, where I had the opportunity to read to his 5th grade students. And so just shout out to Mr. Levi and the crew at Campus Elementary and those wonderful students who welcomed me into their class and told me all about this wonderful book they're reading, Front Desk. I had just an absolutely wonderful time being with students, and I'm gonna color my own thank you note and send it back to them as well. So with that, we will adjourn this first board meeting in person of this year. Thank you for being here, everyone.